had insulted the judiciary without any analysis of facts. In the article titled "Hi Mzansi," have we seen justice? Sisulu questioned the moral standing of the country's judges.
Ms. Sisulu has insulted us, and we as the judiciary have done nothing other than doing our job.
Guns blazing, the acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo came out strongly against an opinion piece by Tourism Minister Lindiwe Sisulu. In the article titled "Hi Mzansi, Have We Seen Justice?" the minister is seen criticizing the judiciary, but the acting Chief Justice says it lacked facts and deemed it as an insult to judges and the Constitution.
It should not be acceptable in a constitutional democracy such as ours that a member of parliament and a member of the executive should wake up one morning without any facts, just write an article and insult all African judges from the highest court in the land.
Zondo says the judiciary should be open to criticism, but it should be fair and based on facts. The acting Chief Justice denied that his forceful response to the article meant that he was entering into politics. He also told the media that he hoped Sisulu would have the decency to withdraw the insult that she had thrown at the country's judges. Ntlantla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
We're joined by two analysts now. Professor Pere Hanyane is with the University of the Northwest, and Bishop Clyde Nicholas Ramalain recently completed his PhD at the University of Johannesburg in Politics and International Affairs. A very good morning to both of you, gentlemen. Thanks for making the time.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Desiree. Good morning to your viewers.
Professor Hanyane, let's start with you. Your summation of these events.
Desiree, perhaps it's a signal that we're living in a democratic dispensation where dissent and ordinarily political conversations should be allowed. But we should take cognizance of the fact that there is always limitations to those conversations. In this instance, it's unfortunate that here lies a public servant, come politician, in the form of Madam Sisulu, who should have taken stock of her role in government and say, is the government so-called superstructure in the position to advance the issues of the plight of the poor, and not be so quick as to putting on trial our constitution, which has been with us for more than 27 years. So that part baffles me quite a lot in saying what contribution has she offered together with other portfolios in government to make a difference, acknowledging, of course, the fact that the constitution itself provides a vision, provides direction, but the rest of the details in legislation are in procedures and the kinds of systems and processes that are put in place in government to make a difference. That distinction doesn't come clear in her analysis.
Mr. Ramalain, do you agree with that analysis, that having been part of a government since democracy, Ms. Sisulu is in no position to be the one criticizing it?
I think I would disagree with it, and my disagreement emanates from the fact that the interpretation of this particular article penned by Ms. Sisulu is actually an important issue to understand the context behind it. Everybody that has been commenting talks from the point of view that she addressed the article from her position as a government minister. They critique her on the basis of that. while the byline is exceptionally clear that says she is the chairperson of the Social Transformation Subcommittee of the African National Congress. The article, therefore, is published from that particular perspective and with that background. The article is not published as a minister within the office. Now, of course, the counter-argument may then be, well, she is a minister after all. The fact of the matter is, just to give you an example, yesterday when DCJ Zondo addressed us at 4 p.m., he said to us, I am now speaking not as the chairperson of the State of Capture Commission. I'm speaking as the responsible caretaker currently of the judiciary in that position. So which means he is effectively still the chairperson of the State of Capture Commission, because his reports are not out yet. All of them are not out yet. Yet he drew that distinction. Now, why is that distinction in our discourse not afforded to a politician? That's my first point. So the moment we appreciate the context of this particular article as written by somebody who, in the course of her responsibility as the chairperson of social transformation, which is an imperative, by the way, for this government, for the ANC and for this government in this regard, who from time to time have opined and shared views. Why is it not engaged within the political dimension for what it is? Why is it dragged to a cabinet minister? That is my first concern that I have. If I could elaborate further on that.
Mr. Ramalane, I hear what you're saying, and in our introduction, we didn't say she wrote it as a cabinet member, but let's just explore some more what you're saying, that she wrote it in her position as the Social Transformation Subcommittee member. Even so, you still have to operate within the party position, don't you? And the party's position is not to attack the judiciary, is it?
Well, one of the other issues that we should engage is the term attack is too often used in our discourse by people or by some people in order for them not to engage critically in that regard. So my view is that it has become too easy in our discourse to hide behind terms of insults, critiques and stuff, not critiques, let's say insult. You can critique, of course. By the way, the Constitution allows, let's first deal with.
All right, technology fails us now, and we're going to, as we try reconnect there, we're just going to go back to Professor Hanyane. Professor Hanyane, just in terms of the issues, Mr. Ramalane, are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
You can finish your point.
Okay, so I'm saying we just have to appreciate the fact that the Constitution allows Ms. Sisulu, like all of us, she's entitled to an opinion. What is happening right now is that is thrown into file 13 at this point in time. She's denied an opinion because somebody has decided if she has an opinion, the opinion must sound a specific way.
All right, we asked our viewers to take part in this conversation, and we have a few tweets that have come through in this regards, just in terms of your thoughts on the article and the acting Chief Justice response. Let's take a look at some of those tweets. Leslie Matsobane says, politics have got no size while judiciary has. For the judiciary to encounter against politics, then that may cause pollution in the air. Mixed feelings start to become outrageous towards a political space. The congestion can be resolved through the rule of law, then politics are nullified. The very rule of law that Ms. Sisulu is questioning exists. In Sinza says, Lindiwe was exercising her constitutional right and I fully support her. I'm worried about our judiciary if Zondo becomes Chief Justice. He has a long time been conflicting himself in ANC factional battles and taking judiciary matters personally. And the Constitution first saying Lindiwe Sisulu is an opportunist politician. She has been too desperate to become a president of the ANC, too desperate she will say everything for political office. Zakele Pangisa says, well spoken to Lindiwe Sisulu. Zondo is more political than to focus on the judiciary fraternity. On that note, he is not fit to be the next Chief Justice. Professor Anyane, let's speak about the real issues at stake here, the issues that Ms. Sisulu brings up. Does that mitigate why she would take this route in addressing the issue?
No, it doesn't, Desiree. That's why I started by taking posture to say, as much as she may have written the opinion piece in her capacity, and by extension, the capacity as serving in a particular committee within the ANC, that does not exonerate her in taking responsibility out of government. The very same government that should have drawn some kind of making sure that there's a difference between the rich and the poor, the inequality that we see, and all other challenges that our society is faced with. I'm beginning to wonder, is she not perhaps proxy to the amount of ideological differences within the party itself? So in other words, is she not playing to the favor and the politics of one state over the other at a time when her own party needs unity, needs some kind of consolidation of a kind that speaks to issues of renewal and all other principles that would suggest that here is a party of choice? But going forward, I can't pick up the fact that she does not espouse the principle of separation of powers. In this instance, acknowledging the fact that the judiciary, it's not a lawmaking fraternity, but rather seized with the cardinal responsibility of interpretation, which then gives power to our legislatures in all spheres, but more so in Parliament, which would then suggest to us that maybe it's one way of saying we should not look at Parliament in terms of lawmaking, in terms of looking at policy as a panacea or as a starting point in resolving some of our societal problems. So there are loopholes there that I find very strongly in her opinion piece initially.
So, Mr. Ramalane, your thoughts on the acting Chief Justice's response? The Star newspaper this morning saying Zondo's naked bid for CJ position. Your thoughts on this?
I looked at the address of Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, and I must say I am more concerned now than before his address. That's my first concern for our judiciary, as well as for political life, and societal life in that regard, because I still maintain that was an irresponsible media press statement that he released. Now, if the DCJ had taken a leave from one of his colleagues, perhaps in England, Lord Edward Coke, the Chief Justice of England, who made a poignant point. He made this point and said, so long as a judge keeps silent, his reputation for wisdom and impartiality remains unassailable. Clearly, our Deputy Chief Justice, who's currently the caretaker of our judiciary, has decided to have a political opinion, regardless to what he may protest and say. What he presented to us, which is recorded all over, was no legal argument that he raised. He was engaging in the political space in which a politician articulated her particular perspective, which is acceptable in society under normal circumstances. The judge, the Deputy Chief Justice, in my particular opinion, has put us in a precarious place in regards to a South African society and how we interpret this judiciary, given the fact that it is a known fact that at this point in time in our history, there is an open position for CJ in this country. The DCJ is one of the contenders, main contenders for that position. At the same time, we are in an elective conference for the presidency of the ANC, which makes Mr. Ramaphosa a contender. We almost get the sense, and this is my interpretation, that between the two of them, something does not make sense here as it relates to the political interest that both have to enter two spaces, one a second term and the other one the CJ position. That is my stance. And he did not cover himself yesterday in any glory for coming out to give this, in my opinion, political speech, nothing but a political speech. Secondly, he equally equated the entire article to his feelings. My concern is when we deal with feelings, where and how far will we go? And to add to that, he never explained the term insult. He never explained the term critique. I would have expected him as a legal scholar to at least apprise us as to what is the understanding of the term insult. You cannot use these social constructs and assume we all know an insult is an insult. So therefore, I'm thinking this morning when we wake up, we are in more dangerous, more precarious place than what we were before the DCJ decided for whatever reason to take the microphone and speak on a political matter. I think he should have taken the advice of Lord Edward Coke in this regard.
Professor Anyani, your thoughts there? With all things considered, a judge should keep quiet to keep their credibility. Do you agree?
Desiree, I don't. I think it's important we acknowledge the fact that Deputy Chief Justice Zondo made it clear that he's not a politician. He doesn't have ambitions of a kind to enter into that fray of engaging head-on with politicians on matters of politics. After all, we understand, as a public servant, he is there to, by and large, protect the integrity of the judiciary. What is happening here is that the background to this fiasco suggests strongly that there are certain sectors, if not constituencies, within our society that has cast a shadow of doubt over the independence and the integrity of our judiciary for quite a while. And it is quite interesting that this whole fiasco comes at a time when one of the important milestone outcomes of the judiciary, and that is the state capture report, is put to bear. And then suddenly we wake up, is this new comes? Why would the judiciary be attacked in the manner in which it is being attacked, not the matter straight to where it belongs? That is the political space within the political party, and make sure that inputs that comes from there still remain politically relevant.
I just want to ask you, Mr. Ramalane, you spoke about the judge being emotional in his responses. I want to ask you this. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation the context under which Ms. Sisulu wrote this article at the Social and Transformation subcommittee within the African National Congress member. She is a part of that committee. She is a part of the African National Congress, and she is a member of government and seen as a leader. Do you not think that when you're bound to such positions, your freedom of speech is more structured than personal? From a surface point of view, one would tend to agree to say that there should be more of a decorum in regards to how people speak that are in power in that regard, regardless to whether that power is judiciary, whether the power is within the political setting. So I accept that. However, this is the caveat. The issue is when politicians are afforded space to be political, they are afforded space to contest, they are afforded to articulate. And when we talk about the contextualization of this particular article, we must appreciate the separation of state and party, an aspect that under this administration has become exceptionally conflated in my assessment. Let me give you a classic example of this. When you are dealing with a party and a state as it is in this regard,
Mrs. Sisulu should be addressed by the ANC because she wrote on behalf of the ANC from that particular position. How Minister Gungubele came into it, how a spokesperson of Justice Minister came into the fray, Crispin Pili came into the fray, I don't understand, or I can't see that. I would have expected that the office bearers of the ANC would have asked her to explain herself in regard to what she wrote, so-called in their name. However, what we have seen is a conflation of both the state and party at this point in time. And that conflation is made possible because, or happens because you had Minister Gungubele coming on TV. He should never have done that. He shouldn't have done that. There was no need for that because the ANC within its own setting has ample space. The contestation for what ambitions people have, there is nothing precluding any politician in any party to have any ambition for that matter. There is no president that has ever become a president without ambition. So we cannot assume that, as Professor Anyane is intimating, that she's representing the ideological conflicts that exist. To some extent, it could be that she does. But on the other side, we need to appreciate that there is a conflation under the Ramaphosa-led administration between state and party. We see that. And even if we want to raise the issue of so-called ill discipline from an ANC point of view. Now, if you look at a classic example, on the night of the January 8th statement on Friday night, and I penned a piece on it, so it's public, you saw right before the president is about to speak in his capacity as the president of the ANC, he is introduced by the chairperson of the Limpopo province, Mr. Stan Matabata. Mr. Matabata then goes from there and he totally opens the debate about second term, and he really puts on the table the issue of elections, which is completely out of sync, out of kilt. The president came up. I would have expected the president to get up and say, as much as the chairperson has a desire and the Limpopo government has a desire to see me lead, I cannot be a part of this because this is ill discipline. It subverts the structures of the ANC. It supplants the authority of the structure that must announce before candidates come up. So the issue of ill discipline that is now invoked upon Lindiwe Sisulu doesn't measure up because we see the hypocrisy of the African National Congress. Unfortunately, Desiree, the ANC has bequeathed the South African society its own factionalism. So whenever any one of us appear, you are already tagged as you are part of this faction and that faction. So in SA, you can't have an opinion. That's the sad thing in this country. Yeah. And unfortunately, judges are not exempted from that.
I don't know if I get you right, but you're summarizing this as a factor of contestation. And just as a parting shot to both of you, I'll ask the same question, gentlemen, with some quarters asking for the president to act against the other side, the other hat she wears as a minister, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu. What is the way forward, Professor Anyane?
Desiree, the way forward would be to perhaps evaluate her performance as a government rep. She is the political head of the tourism portfolio. Wouldn't it be nice to check whether her work is up to date in that regard? So that would be the first issue. But the second issue is obviously to go back to the party itself and say, what would be the ethical guidance in relation to such matters? Yes, we know she has rights. She has all the liberties as a member of a particular political party to advance a particular perspective. But what happens when such a perspective brings harm, not only to the party, but by extension to government? So in this instance, the party itself needs to have a say. I would not necessarily demand the president to act as such.
And let's thank you for your time there. Mr. Ramalane, just wrapping up with you, what should be the way forward with everybody anticipating Ms. Sisulu's response?
A president responding There is an article that Steve Motale has written that everybody must look at. In that article, he engages the subject of his conversation with Karen Moore, the legal journalist. Karen Moore was brave enough to tell Mr. Motale to his face that she will take this directly to the president. Now, how does a journalist have access to the president? She's not even an editor. She threatened him by saying that she will take it to the president, that he can deal with it, of course. So the issue with regard to dealing with Lindiwe Sisulu, it appears to me was not necessarily born from anything else, but it started in all probability with Karen Moore, and I'm not accusing her willy-nilly. I'm saying there is a historical record of that. And so the other issue that I would like to close out on perhaps is to say that, is it not strange that these responses are all aimed, and I'm not playing victim here, but is it because she's a woman that this is happening? Because you know that Trevor Manuel not so long ago took the liberty to also have an opinion about judges. Why was there no need to address Trevor Manuel? In the course of our discourse, many people have opinions about the judiciary. The issue that I'm having is that we have a judiciary that is too sensitive and less and more concerned about politics, and should be concerned about the law, ensuring that they are the custodians of the law. Should this case, if there is a case, here's the problem that Zondo puts us into. If there is a case eventually to surface from this fracas, do you know what's going to happen? Can Zondo sit in a court and preside over this? Can any of those who had sworn allegiance to his feelings sit in a court and preside and give Lindiwe Sisulu a fair judgment? I dare you, they can't.
Well, that's where we're going to end it. And thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Of course, it's an ongoing conversation, and we hope you can speak to us again once the minister has made her responses. Thank you so much once again, Professor Berehanyane and Bishop Clyde Nicholas Ramalane. Let's take a look at some more of your tweets that have come through. Dewa says Zondo did a good thing to call her into order. It's her opinion in her own capacity, but she's still a government leader. Her sentiments leave a lot to be desired. And Optimus saying Lindiwe Sisulu is spot on and should never feel intimidated by the fragile ego of his lordship, Raymond Zondo. Stop looking at my Avi says Zondo is a politician. He should not be elected as Chief Justice. Really strong views coming through, and please continue to send us your thoughts about this conversation of the day, where we're asking about your thoughts on the article and your thoughts on the Deputy Chief Justice or Acting Chief Justice's response. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment.